Second-hand clothing has become an undeniable fashion phenomenon all over the world. Shops with reused clothes are opening one after the other in Sydney. But why people like them so much, and what's the type of the second-hand shoppers?
Kind of people these days that are coming into these vintage shops are people that have already got like a big collection of clothes and they're looking for something a little bit special, a little bit dated, but still cool in a way. So we're seeing people of every age and sort of lots of travellers who just want something fresh for their trip, for a night out. So lots of different people from all different walks of life.
Today's everyone. Vintage is a very niche market, but there's been a big explosion in that kind of clothing. It's very, very popular across the board, and that mainly comes from celebrities wearing and stylists making vintage clothing fashionable.
All sorts of people. People who are interested in fashion, people who want fancy dress. I think it's diversified now, the sort of person who comes to second-hand clothes shops. I don't think there's a particular customer anymore. It's very, I think everyone does once in a while. I think people mix their wardrobes with, bits and pieces. So, yeah. So I don't think there's one type of customer anymore. I think it's, uni students, people who are interested in fashion, musicians, artists,
It's because it's different, and because they're one-offs as well, that no one else is going to be wearing the same piece of clothing.
Called second-hand or recycled, this fashion is usually advertised as green fashion, but is that a factor for the costumers when they choose to shop from second-hand stores?
I think, look, maybe in an area like Glebe that is like a part of it too. Like there's a lot of younger students and things that live around this neighbourhood, and they would be more conscious, like ecologically conscious of what the fashion industry does do destructively. But I think more or less it's people with a keen eye for something a bit quirky that find this shop and find things here to wear and add to their wardrobe.
I think that's a factor. Yeah, I think some people have switched on to that, and I think more people are. But I still think you can get something a bit cheaper, and it's still quite fashionable, So I think that's a factor too. And I think too, it's just you can get something a bit different that you're not going to find anywhere else. Yeah.
I think on some level it's because people were wanting to reuse things and get more use out of them. But I think more than that, it's a fashion trend.
I think Newtown people are pretty environmentally conscious, so yeah. But a lot of it is probably the fashion. That's probably more the case, just because it's different to what you can get in the mainstream stores. So they like the fact that you can come in and get something that's going to be different to what everybody else is wearing.
Reusing and reselling clothes for charity was the original idea of second-hand shops. But what is the idea today? What is the difference between charity shops, second-hand, vintage, and recycled clothes shops?
Not just in Australia, but in Japan, in New York, second-hand shops that aren't charity shops have been going forever, since the late 70s, early 80s. So I think that's how second-hand clothes started. But, I think that shops like us aren't really we're not like a second-hand shop. We're a bit more developed in that, I think we're a bit more sort of, a bit street fashion. It's a bit different than just a charity shop. Yeah, I think stuff's a lot more, sourced than a charity shop. So they get stuff, they whack it on a rack, and that's it. I think we think about what we put on.
A lot of people would like to still go op shopping because you're not always guaranteed to find something, but when you do, it will probably be a lot cheaper than, say, in actual real, proper vintage shops.
The difference between charity shops and vintage clothing shops is this is all specially sourced. Charity shops are there for charitable reasons. They're there for people who are less fortunate.
So, where does this fashion belong after all?
Street fashion, I'd say, yeah. Yeah, definitely.